Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
Hey, what's happening, guys? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around. Today, I'm going to show you a way to make custom and super chilled chord stabs inside of miRack for iPad. Let's get into this. Real quick, before we get started today, be sure and subscribe if you're into this kind of content. On this channel, I talk about everything from making chilled chord stabs and modular synthesizers on iPad to making tracks with iPad. I talk about sound design and making live jams. I talk about new gear. I talk about old gear. Be sure and subscribe. The first thing we're going to do today is I'm going to play you an example groove that I've made in miRack, and this features a chord stab like what we're going to make today. We've got a whole bunch of palm loop oscillators spread out over here playing a bunch of different notes that I've specified, and I'm going to show you guys how to get this all set up today. I'm going to switch over to direct sound and we'll hear what this sounds like so you guys can get a really good idea of what we're about to try to create. There are lots of ways that one could go about making a chord stab inside of a modular synthesizer, and this is just one method of creating a chord stab. We're going to go ahead and start by inserting some tuners and some oscillators today. We'll go ahead and press the plus button at the top of the screen and we'll make sure we're in the tags mode and we'll scroll down to tuner. We're going to go ahead and select the third one in from Bog Audio, the reference tone module. We're just going to go ahead and grab this and put this down here for now. We'll go ahead and insert an oscillator at this time. So we'll make sure that we're in the tags mode and we're going to choose oscillator. Now which oscillators you choose and how you choose to set up your chords is going to be, completely up to you, and one of the things that's going to make your sound, one of the beauties of modular. I like to use this palm loop oscillator right now for this, and what we're going to need is we're going to need a few instances of both this reference tone and both this oscillator. So we're going to go ahead and double click on the reference tone, we're going to click manage, and we're going to click duplicate. We're going to double click on the palm loop oscillator, click manage, and click duplicate. And we're going to repeat this a few times. Manage and duplicate. We're going to go ahead and click on this oscillator, manage and duplicate. Now the reference tone again, manage and duplicate. And the oscillator again, manage and duplicate. And we just do this a few more times, duplicate, manage, and duplicate. One more time, manage, duplicate, and manage and duplicate. We're going to need a way to hear the chord that we create today, so we'll go ahead and insert a mixer at this time. In the tag section, we'll scroll over to mixer. Again, which mixer you choose and how you choose to route the devices that you create inside of miRack is totally up to you. We're going to go ahead and grab this Mix 8 today from Bog Audio, and I'm just going to grab this and put it right up here in the middle so that we can clearly see what I'm routing. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to take a sine output from each of these oscillators, and we're going to route that into the mixer. So I'll patch from the sine output of our first oscillator into the input. I'm going to take the second into the input, third sine output into the third input, etc., etc. So we have all 6 oscillators talking to our mixer here, and we're all routed from the sine output of each oscillator. We're going to be making a B9 sus4 chord today, and we're going to go ahead and adjust the tuning pitches on each of these reference tones so that we can get the chord that we're after. I'm going to go ahead and scroll this one here to a B, and I'm going to scroll the octave down to B3. The next one I'm going to make an F sharp, and I want that to be an F sharp 4. We're going to go ahead and scroll that to F sharp 4. The next one I want to be a B4, so we'll just make that a B4. The next one we want to be a C sharp 5. So I'll make the octave a 5 and bring this down to C sharp 5. The next one we want to be E5, so we'll bring the octave up and we'll bring this pitch down to E5. Lastly, the last note in our chord that I'm looking for here is an A5. So we're going to put the, it's already at A, I'll just scroll the octave up to 5. And now what we're hitting is we're hitting a 9 suspended 4, a B9 suspended 4 chord. We just need a way for our reference tones to send the pitch into the oscillator. So we're going to patch from the volt per octave out of our reference tone into the volt per octave in of our oscillator. And we're going to do that for each reference tone and for each oscillator. Volt per octave into volt per octave so that they're speaking to each other. Volt per octave into volt per octave. It takes a lot of time and energy to make all of these videos. If you've been enjoying my content, I'd like to encourage you to support the channel by maybe purchasing a sample pack over at Electronisounds.com or maybe by becoming a patron over at Patreon.com for as little as $1 a month. You can get yourself quite a few bonus downloads over there as well. The links are in the description. Let's go ahead and patch this up to our audio out so we can go ahead and hear what we've created. You'll notice that I've got a limiter as the last thing before the audio out, and that's helping to protect our ears, our speakers, and our headphones. You can see also that over here on the mix channel, we're sending a pretty hot level from 6 oscillators into this mix 8, and we're sort of clipping on this master channel of the mixer. So if I bring that down a little bit, you'll see that it turns yellow instead of red. We'll go ahead and patch this mixer into our limiter at this time. So we'll go left into left and right into right. I'm going to make sure that that's not too loud on the camera level. We're not worrying about direct sound today at this time. We just want to be able to make sure that you guys can hear me super quickly, super easily rather, not super quickly. But let's go ahead and play this, and so you can get an idea that it's sort of shifting just the tiniest little bit as these oscillators play against each other. We can maybe click this finite adjustment here at the top and maybe just move these fine tunes away from each other on each oscillator to get just a tiny little bit thicker and more robust, interesting sound happening. We could be real dramatic about that fine tune if we wanted to. And start really, shifting that. But that's not really the sound we're looking for at this time. Just a very slight detune of all these oscillators is what we're after. So we'll bring that right back down again. Cool. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and insert some filters between our mixer and our output. That way we can further shape the sound a little bit. We're going to move our mixer over here, and we'll click the plus button. We're going to make sure we're in the tags mode, and we'll choose filter. I've been getting a lot of use out of this stairway ladder filter from Squinky Labs, so we're going to go ahead and insert that today. We're going to use 2 of these today. We're going to go ahead and double click this, click manage, and click duplicate. What we're going to do is we're just going to unattach our outputs from the mixer to the output of the to the input of the limiter rather, and start routing these filters to the output. We're going to take the left out from our second filter and our right out into the left and right ends of that limiter. And we're going to take the right out into the right in of the second filter. So we're just running these together in sequential routing. So we'll take left out from our mix 8 into the left in of our first filter, and right out of the mix 8 into the right in of the mix filter. And now if I press play, we are getting a filtered chord sound. And I want a really clean chord today, so we're going to change both of these filters from transistor to clean. We're also going to change it from a 4-pole to, let's make the first one a high-pass filter so that we can filter out a little bit of the low frequencies. Let's make that a 2-pole high-pass filter, and the second one a 2-pole low-pass filter. The reason that we're doing this is now we have complete control over sculpting the frequency content of this. I can add as much or as little low frequency content as I want, and we can make as much or as little high frequency content as we want with the low pass filter. We can also do some modulation with these, and we can assign these filter cutoffs to do a little bit of movement with our sound. let's go ahead and adjust these filters so that our chord sounds a little bit better right off the top. If we bring our filter cutoff on that low pass filter up all the way to the top, and then we bring our filter cutoff all the way down on our high pass, now we're not affecting the chord at all, and we're just getting a clean signal. We can maybe turn the volume up a little bit on both of these filters. Whoops, stay up there. And then maybe we can just filter out some of the lows to taste using this filter cutoff knob. See, we're getting rid of all the low frequencies here. Okay, and the same thing with this filter cutoff knob on the low pass filter. We're removing all of the high frequencies as I move this filter. Now, as you adjust the Q and the drive, the Q is basically the amount of resonance that you're sending to the filter cutoff, and the drive is just that, the amount of drive and saturation that you're running into the filter. So if you turn this Q up, and you turn that drive up, you get a lot more, audible effect as you're rolling these filter cutoffs. You'll need to experiment with the resonance and the drive to taste. One of the things we might want to do at this time is get this to go ahead and trigger so that we can assign some sort of an envelope and actually create a stab rather than just a constant droning sound that we get now. What we want is an actual stab, ding, and we want that stab to ring out. Let's go ahead and get that set up at this time. Okay, so we're going to add the tools we need to create an envelope for our sound so that it's not just a constant drone. We're going to click the plus button, and we're going to make sure that we're in the tags section. And what we need is a multiple right off the jump. So we're going to grab ourselves a multiple, and I'm going to grab this first one here. And then what we'll need is a couple of other tools. We're going to go to make sure we're in tags, and we're going to go to envelope generator. I'm going to go ahead and choose this ADSR over here, and we're going to move these a little bit closer to where I'm actually going to be using them. And then lastly, we're going to go to Bog Audio and in the packs section, and we're going to go ahead and insert this VC amp over here. Cool, perfect. And then I'm just going to actually move this amp, in the middle here, so it makes a little bit more sense to me. I'm going to grab this and slide it, and grab this and slide it. Double tap here to reset that value that got changed. And now we're going to zoom in on the envelope. I'll make the attack of this envelope all the way down. I'll leave the decay as it is and the sustain as it is. We'll bring that release up maybe just a little bit. Now what we're going to do, what I think I want to do is to move these filters over so it's a little bit closer to our mixer. We're going to go ahead and again, this is the beauty of modular, guys. How you route things so that it makes sense to you is, how you route things so that it makes sense to you, right? We're going to go ahead and move these over and put the filters back on the outside, because what I want to do is remove, I'm sorry about that. We're going to go ahead and unclick the move icon here. And I'm going to unpatch the output from our mix 8. I'm going to go into the multiples with this output, and you'll see why in just a sec. We're going to go left and right into in and in. And now I can take this out here, and I can patch this to the in of our VC amplifier. Okay, we're going to need a gate signal to run this envelope, and we're going to run that into a clock over here. And let's see, we will take the out from our ADSR, and we're going to run that into the CV input patch point of our envelope. And I believe that's all we need to do. Let's see here. I just need to, I've routed that. Need to take the output from the VCA amp envelope into the input of our filter so that we actually get the audio routed through now. There we go. And now we have more of a pulse sound. Turn this down just a little bit. Maybe over here. Now we have more of a pulse sound, so it's not just a continuous drone. And what we can do is we can go ahead and pull this clock down. Now we're getting more of a drone again, but that's because it's literally responding to the envelope that we've got set up here. So if we go ahead and pull the sustain down on the envelope, our sound is no longer sustaining. And we can bring the decay up on this, and we can bring the release up on this. And now we're actually getting more of a stab sound that rings out. We could bring these up. Maybe change this over to linear. The ADSR. Yeah, I like that a little better. This ADSR set to linear sounds a little bit more natural in this situation here. And you can adjust, you know, how much release and how much decay of this you like. We could make it a really short chord stab by bringing the decay down. Right, just a dink. Okay, so we can bring this decay back up again. Cool. Let's go ahead and add some delay and some reverb to this to give it a little bit more life and interest in the mix. There's quite a few ways that you could route this. We're just doing a really simple routing today for the purposes of the tutorial. I'm trying to keep it as absolutely simple as possible. We're going to go ahead and add a delay at this time. So we'll go into tags and we'll choose delay. Which delay you choose is up to you. I've been getting a lot of use out of this clockable stereo delay. And we'll just grab this module and bring it up to the top over here. We're going to zoom in just a little bit, and we're going to patch the left out from our second filter, into the input of the delay here. And we're going to go the right output of our second filter into the input of the delay. We'll take out left and out right back into our main out. And now what we can do is we can send a clock signal to this delay by taking maybe our second clock from our clocked module and running this into the input here, the tap input here. And now, let's see here, if I adjust this clock to maybe a 1.5 and bring the feedback amount up on this module here. That's feedback input. I want feedback here, the second one. Now you can start to hear some of this delay coming through. And we can adjust the dry wet of this delay down here at the bottom, make it a little drier or a little, more wet. I can also maybe put more feedback onto this so that it rings out a bit longer. Yeah, there we go. I'm trying to sort of fill the space before it rings out again. That's sounding pretty good. Let's go ahead and insert a reverb at this time. We'll make sure we're in tags. We're going to scroll down and we're going to choose one of these reverbs. I really like this plateau reverb. I'm kind of a broken record with this one because I'm really liking the sound of it, and I just sort of keep using this one. We're going to go ahead and patch this into our audio signal path here. We'll take and unpatch this from our master limiter here. We're going to take the left out and put that into the left in of our limiter, right out into the right in of our limiter, and then we'll just patch up our delay. Out left into in left, out right into in right, and now we've got our chord stab running through a delay and also running through this lovely reverb. We can maybe bring the dry wet on this reverb down a little bit. We could also maybe take some of the low frequencies and attenuate those so that it's not receiving as much low frequency content, because that tends to make your reverb a little bit muddy. Let's take a listen to this. Now we're getting quite a long, ringing out tail of a chord here. We can maybe turn the decay of our reverb up a little bit, maybe even make it super wet. These are the adjustments that are going to make your sound your sound. Now, one of the things that I really think is important is to give something like this some movement. So you can insert some LFOs and start routing those to move some things in subtle amounts. Let's check that out. Let's go ahead and insert an LFO at this time. We'll make sure we're in tags. We're going to go down to LFO. Lots of different options here, but I'm finding that this one here, this BPM LFO from Frozen Wasteland, typically gets me right where I need to go. Let's go ahead and just bring this maybe down on its own lane here so that you can really see that it's doing something different, We're going to maybe run this into, doesn't really matter, but let's patch this into the third clock. That way we get a little bit more, individual customization as to the tempo of our LFO here. And what let's do is go ahead and press play, and there'll be a reset patch point on the LFO, which we're going to patch into the reset of our clocked module. And now when I hit the reset button, it's got our LFO, in sync with all of our clocks up here, and I want that LFO to be quite a bit slower so that we're doing some slow, movement at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep bringing this number down, this division of the tempo down. Now we're at 8 times, divided by 8 of our main tempo. So here our tempo is 120 divided by 8. That's still moving a little bit fast for what I'm after here. So we'll pull this down to maybe even less at like 16. And now what we use this LFO for and how we route it and what we route it to is completely up to you. I like to use these smooth wave forms like sine and triangle and assign those to things very subtly and very gently. Let's take this triangle here and let's assign this to our second filter, which is the low pass filter. I'm going to route an output from the triangle of our LFO, and I'm routing that into the CV1 patch point here on our stairway filter. You'll see that there's sort of an attenuation knob up above that patch point, and how much I move this knob is directly in relation to how much I want the actual cutoff to move. So being as our cutoff here is at its maximum position, I want that cutoff to move, this knob to turn down as our LFO is controlling it. So I'm going to move this attenuator knob here to the left, and we'll start listening to a change in the sound as we're hearing this knob is actually moving now, even though we can't see that happening inside of miRack. There we have some differences on the frequency now. I'm going to make this even slower, guys. Let's make that a 32 so we can really hear it shifting and changing slowly. So we're getting a little bit of movement there. Let's take an output from the sine of this LFO, and let's patch that into the patch point to move the filter of our high pass filter. And let's just attenuate that subtly to the right so that we're losing a little bit more lows as it moves that LFO. So here we're taking our first filter knob and we're pushing that to the right a little bit, back and forth. And on the second filter, we're taking our cutoff knob and we're pushing that down to the left a little bit. We could even make this slower so it's even more chilled and more subtle, and that the movement that we're creating is super subtle. We could take something like this and we could even route this to maybe our reverb. We could take the dry wet amount of our reverb. We could patch that right on into the LFO here. And then on the little attenuation knob next to that patch point, we could push that up a little bit. And now, well, maybe that's a little too much. And then now, as this LFO does its cycle, it's now moving that dry wet amount knob ever so slightly inside of our reverb here. We could take, something else, maybe to the modulation depth of this reverb. Maybe patch that into a sine wave of our LFO. And then go up here to the attenuation knob and tell that, to move up just a little bit. So our modulation depth knob is now moving just a little bit. Maybe we want to do some more crazy stuff like automate this modulation rate. Let's bring this down into a modulation rate into the triangle waveform, right? Maybe we'll bring this up a little by default so it's not the slowest, but a little bit faster. And then we'll attenuate that so that it's moving this knob ever so slightly. Let's do the same thing with this one here for the modulation shape of our reverb. Let's go ahead and grab this patch point, bring it down here into a triangle, and let's just attenuate this a little bit. Maybe we'll push this a little bit to the right, just ever so slowly as our sound is evolving and as our LFO keeps moving its cycle down here. The benefit to something like this is you can insert multiple different LFOs. You can assign them to move at different times, and then you can assign those LFOs to different things. We could assign the LFO to the volumes on our mixer so that the different notes sort of blend in and out. All sorts of things, guys. This is where your creativity really comes into play. I hope you guys have found this one useful. You can really begin to use something like this to shape a live jam or a track that you're creating. You can make any sort of chords that you like. You can even add a few more oscillators and create a thicker chord. These could all be different oscillators so that you're getting a much more unique waveforms that are coming into your mixer. They don't all need to just be a standard sine wave. It's the experimentation and stuff like this that'll make your sound your sound. Seriously though, where would you go next if you want to continue on an idea like this? You could insert a sequencer and some more oscillators and create maybe a bassline sequence. You could insert some drum modules and create some drum patterns to go with this. You could, repeat this entire process again and thicken the chord stab and double everything up, or use a different chord and trigger them at different intervals using different, ratios of this clocked module. It's really up to you how you continue. I've got a tutorial about creating some different drum pattern variations, and to create up to a 16-bar drum pattern that might be great to build with something like this. I'll put a link to that tutorial in the corner. Real quick, I'm just going to switch over to direct sound so you can get a really good idea of what we actually created today.